What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another week of plate coverage. Me and Commish here back at it, talking just everything baseball as possible. Appreciate all the comments, questions, and concerns, obviously, on the last video and all the messages and whatnot. We absolutely love that. Better to just jump into it right now. Commish, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'd be doing a little bit better if we didn't keep seeing these injuries pile up all around baseball, though.
Yeah, and that was just one thing we just kind of touched on off air, and just kind of going off of what we've touched on previous episodes. I mean, another three injured starting pitchers over the last week: Brian Bello, Blake Snell, Merrill Kelly, all going to the IL, and I'm pretty sure Christian Javier is along there with them. So the Astros have a lot more issues besides Christian Javier, though, which we'll get to a little bit later on in this episode. But yeah, it goes back to touching on what we talked about earlier, is that you got to know these teams in these depth charts, and probably to start taking a look at some of these AAA guys that are going to be coming up soon, because all these guys are going down, and it's not, all these injuries aren't stopping.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think baseball is unique, both from a betting perspective and just from a general sports perspective, in the sense that you have your opening day 26-man roster in baseball, but you have so many more guys that end up earning important innings and important work, plate appearances with the big league club. I mean, most teams will end up using 40-plus guys throughout the regular season. The Red Sox already down Brian Bello, as you mentioned. Nick Pavetta's on the IL. Pavetta, Bello, and Whitlock is also on the IL for them. That's 60% of your starting rotation that you run out on opening day. Then now you're getting innings from other people. They had Rafi Devers out of the lineup. Tristan Casas is on the IL now. Masataka Yoshida was out of the lineup for a little bit. Tyler O'Neill was out of the lineup for a little bit. And that's just one team. That's just one example of a team that has been a little bit more snake bitten than most teams to this point. But in basketball, typically you don't, you have your 12 men at the start of the season. 8 or 9 of those guys are part of your regular rotation. And, you're going to have an injury or two along the way. But you're not going and finding, 3/5 of your starting lineup and trying to piece that together mid-season. The NFL, that'd be the equivalent of, losing 3 guys from, your starting 11 on offense or defense. You just don't see this level of attrition in other sports in a way where you have to get meaningful production out of guys that start the year in AAA, AA, and you see these teams already, deep into their farm systems trying to manage the early season injury bug.
Yep. And that's where you can start to geek out in baseball, maybe a little bit more in the off seasons, but learning which teams have good player development and which don't. And that can be a huge thing, especially with some of these guys coming up. I mean, you take a look at a team like Baltimore, who just seems like they have talent over, a plethora of talent that they just can't seem to get enough of. And then you look at obviously a team like Boston that's really trying to struggle with some of these guys that are coming up. So I know that Boston has a lot of younger guys coming up, like Vaughn Grissom and Marcel Mayo and stuff. But I do one thing issue is they play shortstop, and they're not the Padres, where the Padres are a team where they acquire all the talent they can possibly get. And they don't care if the Padres don't care if it's a shortstop or whatever, because the Padres know a shortstop is the most athletic person on the field, most likely. And so they're going to put him everywhere. Boston's not like that. They're not constructed that way. And it's starting to show. So I'm very curious to see how this team does going forward, because their pitching staff has been fantastic. I mean, it's really hard not to like what you've seen from this pitching staff, even the guys that are hurt that should be coming back, as long as they're not missing a whole bunch of time. But man, this lineup really, really leaves a lot left to be desired.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Boston leading all of Major League Baseball right now in FIP as a pitching staff. They're third in WHIP, so walks plus hits per innings pitched. I mean, the stuff has been unreal. The guys who have been able to stay off of the injured list have really done their part in helping this team get off to a pretty good start, 14-11 through 25 games. So we'll see, man. Hopefully, across the league, Red Sox and otherwise, these guys can stay on the field, and baseball is at its best when its stars are healthy. So
well, and to be fair too, really quickly, if you're a Red Sox fan and you think that we're shooting digs, I will say that Rafael Devers hasn't been coming along very well. He started to get hot today. It's the 24th of April. He hit a home run. I had a single and a run batted in as well. So it just to hammer the point home, Tyler O'Neill, Jarren Duran, Tristan Casas, your top 3 guys as far as WAR, and 2 of those guys are hurt or have been hurt for a lot of the season. So it's just really hard to make up for that.
100% agree. But on a truly positive note, I know there's one team that you want to highlight this week in our going up segment. Why don't you get into these Seattle Mariners a little bit?
Yeah, man. Well, first and foremost, I just got to say that it's one of those things where I think that people really have a hard time with this team, and I get it. I mean, the offense is definitely not what we want in a daily basis, I should say. I'm trying to pull up the numbers really quick that I just had for the Mariners. Of course, I don't have them, but over the last couple of weeks, they've been absolutely fantastic. All their numbers is skyrocketed. They're a top 5 offense in this league. Like I said, over the last couple of weeks, I know that they started very slow, but they're 7-3 their last 10, and like I said, they're scoring runs and. Not only are they scoring runs, but they're preventing runs as well. George Kirby, Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, all those guys. I understand they've had some bad starts here and there, especially Castillo, but Castillo's also had back-to-back good starts. And that Mariners bullpen has been absolutely fantastic as well. So I just think that that's one of the teams I really wanted to highlight. I know that they took a hard loss today in Texas after a really nice win with Logan Gilbert on the mound, but J.P. Crawford was hurt, and then Kyle Raleigh had a emergency dental surgery. I guess he played with a broken tooth yesterday when he hit that home run for us. He had surgery today, so I don't know how long he's going to be out. It doesn't seem like he's going to be out for very long, but they're even getting production from guys like Josh Rojas, who hasn't really put together a really huge offensive season. He has really good numbers, but he also has really good hard hit numbers, so I think things are starting to come click for him. So if this offense can get going, I don't think there's any questions about the pitching staff. I know that you can poke holes in Castillo, and some people want to poke holes with Kirby and whatnot, but the fact of the matter is this bullpen and this pitching staff as a whole has been absolutely fantastic, and should continue to be fantastic as well. The Mariners are never going to win games beating you 10-1 or anything like that, like the Rangers do. But I will say that they will outpitch you to death, and Fangraphs has them at a 60% chance to make the playoffs right now. That's the best in their division by a long shot. The next closest in that division would be the Astros at 44%. And I just think that the computers don't realize how bad the Astros are really bad right now. So that's just one thing I wanted to punch out. I know I get kind of labeled as like a Seattle homer. I'm really not. I actually kind of hate them at times, but I do live on the West Coast, so I do see them a lot, and they've just been really, really good the last couple of weeks. So I really wanted to give them some flowers.
Yeah, and I think completely deserved. You mentioned the pitching staff. So far, they are 4th in FIP, which is basically just a more predictive version of ERA for those who are unfamiliar. Not allowing hardly any traffic on the bases. The 1.07 WHIP leads all of baseball. Again, walks plus hits per inning pitched. And then you look at that K to walk ratio. I mean, 4th best K percentage so far. And then, they're walking fewer guys than any other team in baseball. That's going to play. Whether you're playing in Seattle, pitcher-friendly venue at T-Mobile Park, or elsewhere, this is a team that day in and day out is going to give themselves a chance to win. Really, Hancock has been the only guy in that rotation that has been even somewhat shaky. And I'm with you. Like, you can definitely poke some holes in Luis Castillo, but they're holes in the sense of this guy's not truly an ace, but he's absolutely a bona fide number 2 or number 3 in a rotation. And when you're getting guys like Bryce Miller with this splitter who has completely fixed his platoon issues that he had last year where he really struggled against lefties. Now, even if you think Luis Castillo's not an ace, now you have Logan Gilbert, you have Luis Castillo, you have George Kirby, and you have Bryce Miller. That's 4 guys who are going to give you a chance to win a baseball game every single time you step on the field. That's 80% of your games that you're going to have a chance to win regardless of what the offense does that day. And then you just hope you can figure it out with Hancock. And, they gave him some run support the other day. This is a team, I mean, I was high on them preseason. I had them plus 300 to win the division. I like them a lot. God willing, if they can stay healthy, get these bats going a little bit. Guys like Polanco, I think we haven't seen the best out of him. Cal Raleigh, like you said, heating up a little bit. I think there's a lot to like with Seattle, even if maybe it's a little painful the start they've gotten off to with guys like J-Rod and some of the other big boys scuffling.
Well, and a couple things I really want. One thing I did want to point out too with Emerson Hancock, I do think that he's going to be a stud. And if you take a look, he looked really good against Colorado. So that was definitely by far his best performance of the year in his 4th start, where he went 6 innings, gave up 4 hits and 2 runs in a win. But the previous 3 starts, nothing crazy good. But the Cubs, Brewers, and Guardians, all those teams, top hitting teams in Major League Baseball so far to start the season. So it's not like he's been it's not like he's had a very soft landing into Major League Baseball. So that's one thing that Bryce Miller ran into last year as well. And we've seen how well Bryce Miller has been to start the year for Seattle. So it's just one of those things. The stats I was looking for the Seattle offense. Thank you, Prop Beaver. Last 2 weeks, second in WRC plus, 17th in ISO, first in on-base percentage. So the bats are starting to come into play for the Mariners.
Shout out to our guy, Prop Beaver.
I love him.
The best.
I'm a super stats guy, but I don't write all this stuff down. I keep it in a notebook and stuff. He is so good at writing it all down, putting it in stuff. He's awesome. Follow Prop.
We're gonna get him on the show at some point, man, because
he will. He said he would. I asked him if he would. He said he would. So yeah.
No.
Anyway, who do you
like?
I
just miss his speeches. I love doing the lives, and he just the different rants that he goes on are one of one, man. You don't get that kind of energy and disdain from people not named Prop Beaver.
He puts a lot of energy and a lot of effort into it. He doesn't really leave. It's one of the guys that never leaves a stone unturned, and you have to respect that. So
now he works his ass off, man. I mean, he's got 10 pages of notes before I even go to bed each day. Yeah. So no, it's good stuff. Well, my team last week, I mentioned the Cleveland Guardians as my team that was going up, and as we're doing the show right now, they still have the best run differential in all of baseball, 17-7. Even after getting their ass whooped by the Red Sox earlier today, my team this week, also in that division, the Kansas City Royals. I know, Toast, you like them preseason. Third best run differential in baseball right now. You got the Guardians at the top, then the Braves, and then the Royals. Not the most difficult schedule early in the season, but this is something we talked about in our AL preview pod. The schedule is going to be soft all year for the Guardians, the Royals, the Twins, the Tigers, all these teams in the American League Central. It's a cupcake schedule all the way through the 2023. They're going to play a lot of bad teams, a lot of teams that are probably not going to be in the playoff picture, and you got to take advantage. I mean, the White Sox, they're 3-20, and they got the same soft schedule as a lot of these other teams in the American League, and especially in the American League Central. The Royals, we mentioned the Mariners pitching staff. We talked about the Red Sox pitching staff a little bit. Let's go take a look at what the Royals have done. Our boy Brady Singer, who we mentioned as a potential bounce back candidate, just been absolutely stellar so far. Leading with the slider, new pitch mix. He's been fantastic. You've seen the strikeouts pop back up.
He's back. We can say Brady Singer is back. Officially.
He's back.
Yeah.
I mean, this might be the best version we've seen of Singer so far. A little bit less
better than ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun to watch. Brady Singer's been fantastic. Marsh, Lugo, and Michael Wacha, these three guys have been consistently giving Kansas City a chance to win the game, even against good teams, even against teams like Baltimore. Alec Marsh, a couple of nice outings. The one concern that I do have with this team, those guys, not a lot of strikeouts. You can see right here, Alec Marsh and Seth Lugo, both sub 20 K percentage. Michael Wacha, I think, is going to be much better at home than he will be on the road. He's just one of those guys. Definitely benefits from the bigger ballpark in Kansas City, more pitcher-friendly venue. But we saw him have a lot of success in San Diego in a similar situation. You pitch half your games in a pitcher-friendly ballpark. There's a lot of value to be had in that. So, those four guys have been fantastic. Cole Reagan striking a lot of guys out so far. The run prevention metrics haven't exactly been there. Is what it is. I think he's probably a little bit better than what we've seen to date, even if he's not an ace like many people thought he was going to be last year. But the Royals, I mean, you look at the staff as a whole so far, 7th and 5th out of the gate, and they are Kansas City 15th in WHIP. So you figure at worst they're a top half pitching staff right now. 15-10 start through 25 games. The American League looks a little bleak. Like if we're being honest, those American League Central teams have gotten off to a good start. The Guardians and the Royals. Baltimore, New York, off to decent starts. There's nobody else that's really jumping off the page for the first month of the season. Is this a team, Toast, that maybe could be playing in October? And everybody laughed at them preseason, talking about they want to win the division, they want to get back to the postseason, but they're off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, and they're not. I mean, and their bullpen isn't bad either. They're ninth in ERA. Let's see what they are in FIP. Really bad. Hopefully they're not too bad in the FIP category. Yeah, they're not too bad in FIP either. I really am starting to really like Angel Zerpa and MacArthur. Both of those guys, a little bit of heaters, really good strikeout capabilities. So yeah, I do think that Kansas City is definitely there. Look, I said when they signed Lugo and Waka that this team was going to be solid, just because I saw what Lugo and Waka did for the Padres last year, and I didn't think things were going to change that much. Both of those guys, solid veteran starters that are going to give you a chance to win the baseball game every time they're out there, and that's just plain and simple. So, and then you have guys like Bobby Witt Jr., who's been an absolute superstar. MJ Melendez is another young superstar. Salvi Perez behind the plate. Vinny Pasquantino at first. I mean, there's a lot of things to like. There's some speed there. They play in a ballpark that they play really well at. They're 10-5 to start the year at home. So there's a lot of things to like about the Royals.
I completely agree with you. It'll be interesting to see if they can sustain this early start. I mean, ownership was adamant during the offseason. They said, we will not put out a product anywhere near as bad as we did in 2023. And credit to them. People laughed at them. They spent a lot of money in free agency, like you mentioned, and the early returns have been good. It's going to be interesting to follow them and see if they can sustain this. It's plus 38 run differential through 25 games. I don't care what the schedule's been. I don't care what the weather's been like. It's impressive, and there's not many teams doing what they've been doing. So worth highlighting this week.
Yeah, it's extremely impressive. I don't know if you said this, but the only team with a better run differential in the American League is the Cleveland Guardians.
Yep.
So the Royals are doing very well on all facets of baseball.
100%. But Toast, on the other side of this, I think I finally converted you on the Houston Astros.
Oh, I'm 100% on board with they stink. Oh, my Lord. First and foremost, this is going to be I don't know how they're going to continue this year. Like, I'm not trying to make a case that they're going to be bad because it's really hard for me to say that they're going to be bad after what I've seen the last couple of seasons. I mean,
but you can, Toast, if you can allow yourself to get there, my man.
Oh, I'm already there. It's just hard for me to stay there and be confident about it. But wait until just give me a second. But my point being is that you have things like Fangraphs and stuff that still think that they have a 44% chance to make the playoffs, and I'm just not seeing it. I mean, it's just to a point where who's going to be starting for this team? I mean, you have Ronel Blanco, who's 30 years old himself, and I know that he's been a nice flash in the pan to start, but is that somebody that you can really trust going forward? Christian Javier has been pretty decent for them in his 4 starts, but again, I think he just went on the IL. If I saw something about it, I'm not sure exactly what it was before we started the show. I know that came through yesterday or whatever. I'm a little bit behind. Framber Valdez is on the IL. Hunter Brown can't be trusted. JP France can't be trusted. I'm sure Justin Verlander is going to be just fine. I mean, for the most part. I mean, but what do you really expect from 41-year-old Justin Verlander at this point? He can't be your ace. And then you have the other guys like Spencer Aragati or Spencer Spaghetti, as we like to call him on the show. That, I mean, haven't been it's just not something that we're accustomed to seeing with the Houston Astros. So then it's like, oh, okay, so well, maybe they do have some really, really good bats and stuff like that. Yeah, they do, but they also have guys like Jose Abreu, who really can't do anything in any way, shape, or form. Alex Bregman, who's really doing nothing right now with a 68 WRC plus on the year. Chas McCormick, a 91 WRC plus. I mean, Kyle Tucker, Jose Altuve, Jordan Alvarez, Jeremy Pena, all these guys have solid WRC plus numbers, but they're really poor defensively, and they're really not doing anything else besides that, and they're not driving in runs. And then the worst part about it, I wrote all this stuff down because, again, I spent, just like the Oakland, I spent about an hour on the Astros to make sure that they were bad.
Yeah.
The Houston Astros, they signed Josh Hader. They should have a lockdown bullpen. Hader, Presley, Abreu, Montero. I'm probably leaving off a couple guys, whatever. 27th in WAR at a negative 4.4, 22nd in XFIP at 4.9, 27th in ERA at 4.4 or a 4.59, 8th in innings pitched, and they don't even throw the ball hard. They're average, or their 22nd average fastball velocity. So it's not even like, oh, they can get out there and throw hard and get strikes and maybe they'll get some people out. They're not even throwing it hard. So it's just all bad in Houston right now. I've never seen them like this. This is crazy to see, but they cannot be trusted. Today was a great example. Belly went down for the Cubs. The Cubs bottom of the lineup for the Cubs looked absolutely terrible. And the Cubs, at no point in the game today were the Cubs worried about losing that ball game. I think they won 5-2 or 4-2 or whatever. So the Astros aren't scoring runs. The Astros aren't preventing runs, and they're being priced like they're the ALCS champs again. So, and it's just not right. So Houston's going to be on a fade watch for a long time for me.
I'm glad you're finally on board, Toast. I've been trying to get you there.
That was really hard. I saw those I swear to God, I checked those bullpen numbers 3 times because I was like, there's no way this is. I mean, I knew it was because I saw it with my eyes, but it's just so crazy to see him actually there.
Yeah, well, that's the one part of the team that I actually thought was going to be pretty good. I wasn't very high in the lineup going into the year outside of Tucker and Alvarez. The rotation I wasn't very high on, but the bullpen, any bullpen that has Josh Hader, Ryan Presley, Rafael Montero, and Bobby Abreu, or Brian Abreu, apologize.
Same thing.
Your 6 through 9 should be on lock on any given day. You're 7 through 9 at minimum. If one of those guys is used, you're 7 through 9 in a ball game. Like, it should be very, very tough for opponents to get runs against you. But we've seen it now numerous times. I know you just mentioned the stats. They blew a game against the Braves the other day. JP France actually gave them some good innings. They were up 4-2 late. They let the Braves come back and tie it. They lose in extras. They're giving away a lot of games. And with the rotation, and Javier is on the 15-day IL, by the way, but the rotation, Blanco has been far and away their best number. But even these numbers are skewed by the fact that he threw a freaking no-hitter in there and then took a no-hitter into his next start. There's no way you're going to get that level of sustainable production from Blanco. They've used 8 starters already, and we've looked at other teams like the Royals and some of the teams that have been healthier that have still only used 5 to this point. Framber's probably not coming back anytime soon. Justin Verlander's 41. We know what that looks like as a profile for a pitcher. You're not going to get anywhere near ace level production from him. Hunter Brown. What did Hunter Brown work on this offseason? I can't believe this guy has come back and been absolutely atrocious through his first few turns in the rotation. And this is a guy that a lot of people have been high on, myself included, as a long-term prospect, but he's not moving in the right direction right now. I don't know if he's tipping pitches. I don't know what's going on with him, but his stuff has not graded out very well. He got chased from that ball game against the Royals in the first inning the other day. There's just not a lot to like with this team, and yeah, I mean they're 7-18 at this point. You mentioned it pre-show. The only teams in the American League with the worst run differential at this point, the Oakland Athletics and the Chicago White Sox in the American League, and of course you have some of the bottom feeders in the National League as well that are to be expected. But this is not the typical tier of teams that the Houston Astros are used to being in conversations with.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really simple. I mean, I'm not that run differential is the end-all be-all, but it's a pretty good indicator of how your team's playing either way. Yep. And the only teams with worse, Colorado at -57, Miami with -47, Chicago White Sox with -82, Oakland with -40, and then you have the Houston Astros at -34. That's the company that you are keeping, Houston Astro fans.
Yeah, it's 1 month or 6 months. The Astros have just not been. We have not seen too many 7-18 stretches from the Houston Astros in the last 7 years.
No, and that's where it's like it's just crazy, and it's you even see the fan graphs. Like they have so many pieces that even fan graphs thinks that they're going to make the playoffs. Like I just have a hard time believing that. If you can get a good number on them not to make the playoffs, I doubt you can. But if you can, I would probably take a stab at that because there's got to be at some point, if you're the Astros and you know that you have all these guys that are aging. At some point, these guys are all aging. I understand that they're still good, but they're all aging. I mean, do you trade Tucker? Do you trade Bregman? I mean, both of them, you're going to have to pay both of them, and you're not going to pay them both. Maybe not either. I mean, at what point, if you're the Astros GM, I can't think of his name right now. It's not Dana Brown anymore. But anyway, if you're the Astros GM, I mean, what point do you start taking trade offers on Bregman? Unfortunately, Bregman can't do anything right now at the plate, so I'm sure you're not going to get much of it. It's still Alec Bregman. So I think that if you're a contending team and you put Alec Bregman at third base, you're going to be pretty happy come October. So, but it's again, I mean, what if somebody adds Kyle Tucker? What if somebody empties the farm for Kyle Tucker? I mean, that's not going to change somebody's lineup for the better.
Yeah, and if you're Houston, you have to consider it, right? You've gone to 7 consecutive ALCSs. You've done what you could. You've done everything you possibly could in this window outside of not capitalizing in a couple of World Series appearances. But, I mean, you have to replenish the farm at some point because right now you don't have Carlos Correa coming through the minors anymore. You don't have Bregman. You don't have George Springer. You don't have, Framber, like all these young guys coming through the system. You have to replenish that talent at some point. It'll be interesting to see. They're minus 115 to miss the playoffs right now on DraftKings for what it's worth.
Yeah, I would take that.
Look, I mean, I'm on board. I was on their win total for the season. At minus 115, they already got 18 losses in the bank. You can't take any of those losses out.
True.
You figure for them to win, they'll probably need to win what, let's say 87 games to be in contention for a wild card spot. So at that point, they'd have to go 80 and they'd have to go 80 and then 75 minus 18. They'd have to go 80 and 57. Am I doing that math correct? The rest of the way?
Something, yeah, pretty much.
In 137 games. So 80 divided by 130. So they essentially have to play 0.583 times, and we're just doing this math live. They have to play at a 95 plus win pace the rest of the season just to win 87 games.
In a division with the Mariners and Rangers as well.
Yeah, and you don't have prime Justin Verlander. You don't have Framber Valdez. You don't have a playable Hunter Brown at this point.
Yeah.
It's an uphill battle.
And I'm not trying to make a case that the Angels are some good team, but they do have guys like Detmers and stuff. So it's not like if you catch him, I mean, you're not going to be sweeping the Angels like you have been in past years and whatnot. So, yeah. It's just not looking good for Houston. So, why don't you tell them who you're down on this week, hater?
Look, I'm down on the Dodgers, and I want to clarify before we get into anything else. This has absolutely nothing to do with Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts has been sensational. This is not a Mookie Betts problem. It's not. You'll never hear me say a bad word about Mookie Betts in any shape or form. But the Dodgers, I just think it's worth pointing out right now, and again, like context matters, right? The Dodgers still have the 4th best run differential in the National League. They're still in first place in their division. The thing that's notable about the Dodgers, in my opinion, and this was really overlooked during the offseason, and I know we talked about it earlier in an earlier episode of the podcast, their defense is so bad. They have a really bad defense. This is even more problematic when you consider the fact that they have a pitching staff that gets a lot of ground balls. And outside of Tyler Glass now and Yamamoto's coming into form a little bit, this is not a pitching staff that gets an abundance of strikeouts like we've seen in past years. Like there is no healthy Clayton Kershaw at this point. There is no, again, say what you want about Trevor Bauer off the field, but as a baseball player, the guy has always been a pretty good baseball player. They're 11th in strikeout percentage as a staff right now. It's not great. They're 15-11. They're playing at a 93 win pace. This is for sure a playoff team. And there's no reason to panic whatsoever. You have Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, your top 4 in a lineup. And that's before you get to Max Muncy and Teoscar 5-6. This is a very, very deep lineup, but things to pay attention to. Very, very mediocre against left-handed pitching. They 105 WRC plus going into the week against left-handed pitching. Very, very mediocre, very middle of the pack there. And when you face, we've seen them. They lost to Sean Manaea the other day. Mitchell Parker had a really nice outing against them, his MLB debut. There's been a lot of lefties not named Patrick Corbin that have had success against this lineup. And it's because at 6 through 9, and even Max Muncy, when he's in there, they're not great against left-handed pitching. They're beatable. So that's concern A for the Dodgers against lefties. 2, the defense. It's an overlooked aspect of baseball. You have to be able to turn balls in play into outs on a regular basis. And that doesn't just mean errors. I think the most fundamental thing that people should take away from anything about conversations regarding defense in baseball, it's not just errors that hurt you. If you're not getting to the balls in the first place, a la Teoscar Hernandez in left field, Gavin Lux. Well, you talk about a middle infielder who's not off to a great start. defensively who got moved from shortstop late in spring training because he just wasn't cutting it. Max Muncy, my God, I have respect for anybody who plays the game of baseball, but how does this guy get to the major league level and he can't come through the baseball at third base on a regular basis? Like at no point has someone sat down with Max Muncy and said, you have to be able to field the baseball at third base. And you can't DH him. You got Ohtani DHing. Will Smith is, your backup DH option. And then long term, and this is getting into a different conversation, but long term, what do you do with Max Muncy? I know he's only going to be a couple years on his contract, but it's a roster that doesn't fit the way I think a lot of people think it fits. Their win total was at 104, for God's sake, before the season started. I don't think they're that good. They're probably a little bit better than what they've shown so far, but I don't expect this team to run away from the Padres or the Giants in that division. Even I don't love the Diamondbacks. If Jordan Montgomery is going to look halfway decent and then they get Eddie Rodriguez back, that's not a really bad team in the NL West. They're going to be tested by some of those teams. I'm just saying, watch out. If the Padres bats get rolling at some point and you get Darvish back healthy with Joe Musgrove, with Dylan Cease, all of a sudden Matt Waldron is a competent knuckleballer who's giving you reliable innings every time out.
Can I say something really quick? Just to the Padres point. If that were to happen, I think that's even more disaster for the Dodgers because Waldron's going to be coming in as like long relief or in the middle of games because they're going to be using a knuckleball. If he's on like you think if he has been like he showed tonight in Colorado, that's going to be even worse for the Dodgers. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree. I mean, all of that is to say the Dodgers are a good team. They're not. I don't think they're a juggernaut in the way people think.
Well, the fact of the matter is, they, like you've said over and over again, and you're 100% right. They still have Max Muncy at third base, and they still have Gavin Lux at second base, and that is not a super recipe for success with you guys. With these guys, double plays above average, or double play runs above average. Dodgers are one of the dead last teams in the Major League Baseball, so they're having a really hard time turning double plays, which goes back to getting in front of the baseball and all that stuff. So this isn't, and I'll say it for Commish, the Dodgers are good. The Dodgers are going to make the playoffs. But if you're talking in a context of World Series and stuff, there are some holes there that have to be established, and that bullpen is going to be one of them soon.
Yeah, and that's all I'm really trying to say. I mean, the Dodgers are – I can't – team futures – here it is. The Dodgers are plus 350 to win the World Series. The Braves are plus 380. No one's even close to those two teams. And I just think that's so fundamentally flawed. I think it's a lot more wide open than people are.
Yeah, I was going to say I wouldn't even have people might laugh. I wouldn't even have either one of those two teams as my favorite to win the World Series.
I mean, you love the Braves. You really don't think that the Braves are deserving of plus 380?
Who's pitching game 1, game 2, game 3 for the Braves? Go ahead, please tell me. I'd love to hear it.
Well, Spencer Strider's not there. You don't like Max Fried. Chris Sale may or may not be there. Hopefully he is, but he's had some health concerns. No, I'm with you. I just think it's a more the National League West is maybe a little bit more competitive than people think. The Dodgers are just not as good as people think. So going down relative to they're not on pace to win 105 games, and there's some concerns there. That's all I was getting at with the Dodgers.
100%. And again, I'm not trying to make a case that the Dodgers and Atlanta are not good baseball teams. I'm just saying that if I'm picking a World Series winner, neither one of those teams' bullpens I love, and neither one of those teams' starting staffs I love. So the pitching is really, really big for me in October, and I don't love the pitching for either one of those teams.
Yeah. Well, on that note too, because I mean, odds are factored into that as well. You might like the Dodgers and the Braves, but not at that price relative to.
I was going to say, yeah, exactly. That's everything's in context. Exactly.
Yep. But on that note, then, from a betting perspective, each week we get on here and we have a little bit of advice or like a piece of betting wisdom or experience that we've learned along the way that we share with people. What do you got for us this week?
So mine, I didn't really have anything crazy, but I guess I'm dealing with it right now. It's kind of trust your reads. because especially in baseball, it's a really frustrating sport. And so you can have a 1, 2, 3 day period where feel like you're really seeing the board very well. And you're not getting in the results. That's happened to me the last couple of days. I took a couple hard losses. I've had a couple plays that I shouldn't have probably made, but I made them anyway. For instance, like today, 2 plays today that really pissed me off. The Marlins first 5 money line at plus 190. I get it. The Marlins are bad, yada, yada, yada. The world bets the Braves. It was 3-1. I understand it wasn't close, but the Marlins had so many chances, and they ended up coming back and tying the game, losing in extra innings. It is what it is. Seattle, another one. My favorite was probably my favorite play today. Had a full unit on them at plus money against Texas. I checked the lineup. Everything is good. I placed my bet. 30 minutes later, J.P. Crawford is out of the lineup with an oblique injury, and Cal Raleigh's going to an emergency dentist in Arlington because his tooth hurts bad. Does that mean, and they lose 5-1. So does that mean that my read was bad? Because my Bryce Miller pitched well. He gave up 2 homers, which I was fine with. I said, if you give me 6 innings, a 2-run ball with Bryce Miller, I'm good with that. And he gave me that. Actually, he didn't give me 6, but regardless, he was pitching fine. And I lost the bet, and I was down. I think I was ended up being down, or I was just green today, barely. But my point being is that just because I lost the bet doesn't mean the read was bad. And in baseball, you might have to do that. You might have to go in and look at some box scores. I'm not saying go in and deep and look at like exit velo and all that BS. That's fun to look at, but look at the box scores. If you guys are, if the guys are on first and second and you're leaving, again, another thing with the Mariners today, they had left a guy in scoring position in the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth inning or something like that. So they had multiple chances to score and they didn't score. Again, to the point where I don't think my read was bad. The result wasn't right, but my read wasn't bad. So just trust yourself, give it some time. I always tell people, especially like, I give Sauce a hard time because he likes to take plus 1.5 or plus a half run in the first 5 or full game. And I always tell people, like, regardless of how you do 1 or 2 games, like, show me what you do in 25 times. Show me the last 25 times that you've taken plus 1.5 and show me how many times that plus 1.5 came in involved. And if it's more than 10 or 15, then maybe you have a point. My bet is that it comes into play like less than 12. So It's just one of those things where everybody has a strategy, but regardless of what your strategy is, trust yourself, trust your reads. And if you have a bad play, go back and check it and be okay with yourself. Hey, if it was a bad play, it was a bad play. We'll make that mistake and move on. If it wasn't a bad play and you lost, don't be afraid to fire again. That's it. I'm telling my rant. I had to say that because I was dealing with that today. I was so pissed off before this podcast with Seattle. You guys have no idea how mad this Mariners team has made me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you though, man. I think baseball more than any other sport, you have to be willing to play the long game. And I know last week my advice was you got to track everything. And Prop Beaver is real big on the day-night splits. My day-night splits have been freaking awful so far this year. I'm hemorrhaging money in day games, and then in night games, I've been a lot more successful. But it's netted out to where I'm just barely in the green so far this season. But I think one underrated aspect of betting, and especially betting baseball, you're going to have periods where you're not setting the world on fire, but you need to understand that like part of being a very profitable sports bettor or being able to make money betting sports is when things aren't going your way, instead of losing 10 units, you're treading water. And I think it's a really non-sexy part of sports betting. But like I opened the season on a heater. I think I went 24-8 or 25-8 to start the season. And these last 2 weeks have been up a day, down a day, up 2 days, down 2 days, up a day, down a day. And I look at the reads, and I'm not really disappointed in any reads per se across the board. You got early in the season, you got guys with pitch mix changes. You have, guys pitching cold weather, warm weather. Kevin Gausman is a good example of like a guy whose velo's been all over the place. Tough to cap on a start-to-start basis. A lot of these offenses are just getting going. Cold weather has impacted a lot of games. I think what you're saying is exactly right. Like if you trust your reads over the course of a long season, baseball will reward you in a way that other sports don't, because the data does matter in baseball. It might not show up on Monday. It might not show up on Tuesday, but if you consistently bet the same way and you have good reads, it will show up 4 out of 7 days. It will show up, 3 out of 4 weeks in a month. It'll show up 3 out of 4 months throughout the course of a season. But you got to make sure that you don't let the psychology of betting get to you in baseball, because there's some tough beats in baseball, man. You mentioned the Marlins. There's nothing worse than watching a team that you feel like you had a good read on go 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position, or make a couple of errors that lead to 5 runs coming across the board. And like, you just can't, you can't handicap for that kind of stuff. So no, I completely agree with you. I think it's some good advice. One, I guess it's a more specific piece of advice this week is
one you're about to share.
Make sure you read the house rules.
I got burned by people in the back.
Yeah, and I got burned by this actually this week because DraftKings, I didn't realize they changed their house rules on hitter strikeout props this year, where in the past, if you bet if you bet Young-Hoo Lee is the guy in question here, if you bet him under a half of strikeouts, in the past, even if he didn't start the game, if he were to pinch hit and then take 1 at bat or 2 at bats and avoid a strikeout, then you would still cash your bet. The problem is now they have it in their house rules that he has to start. Otherwise, that bet becomes void. So today, he wasn't in the starting lineup. They sat him against the lefty. He came in late in the game, pinch hit, had 2 plate appearances, didn't strike out. If you place that bet on BetMGM, you gained a half unit today. If you place that bet on DraftKings, it voided, and then you just got your money back. So it's important. There was a game earlier in the season, the Braves and the White Sox. The Braves, I think, were up like 8-2 or 9-2 through 8 innings. And obviously, it's an official game by MLB standards. The Braves won. It's a win in the standings. That game counted. All the stats counted. There's sports books that don't recognize that as an official game. So There was a lot of people that bet the Braves money line -1.5, or they bet the total in that game. And because house rules are different at each sports book, not everybody paid those tickets out. So make sure you read the house rules. Everybody gets burned on it from time to time, and they change, especially with how competitive the retail sportsbook space is. It's just important to understand who you're betting with, how they're going to pay you out, and there are certain markets where, like BetMGM, I'm probably going to stop betting hitter strikeouts at DraftKings, because if a guy sits, it is tremendously to your advantage. If a guy like Young-Hoo Lee is only going to get 1 or 2 plate appearances, and you're getting him at +100 to avoid a strikeout, you absolutely want that value. But DraftKings is now stripping that away in a way that MGM and other places are not.
Yeah, read the house rules just in general, guys. I mean, whether it be the strikeouts that he's talking about. I mean, we see rainouts or delays all the time in Major League Baseball. It's one of those things where different houses. I mean, I know some houses that you'll be house rules where all it has to be is get through the 6th inning, and once the first pitch of the 6th inning happens, they'll pay anything out if the game cancels or stops short or whatever. Others, you have to play a full 9 inning for them to pay anything at all, props or anything concluded. So like you said, all of them are different. You just have to pay. And one thing I will add too, if you think that should have been paid out for something, make sure you send something to customer service, because sometimes the books screw up as well. I've seen that happen before as well, where they should have been paid out. They didn't get paid out because it was a rain delay. They just asked the book, well, hey, what's going on? Oh, that was our mistake. My bad. Like it was nothing. So just pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And they're competing for your business. So never feel shy to go to them and say, hey, this got paid out at DraftKings. This got paid out at FanDuel. Why aren't you paying this out at ESPN or at another book? So all good stuff. And just keep your head up, man. It's a long season. We're only 25 games into 162 games plus the playoffs. So we got plenty of time to keep learning and make some money. And on that note, K segment this week. So just a little refresher with some terminology. O swing percentage, how often are guys? So like anything O swing, O contact, it's always in reference to pitches outside the strike zone. Z swing, Z contact, always in the strike zone. So you can just think about that as like I saw someone refer to it as I swing percentage the other day. It's not like, that's not the wrong way to think about it. It's like in the zone. The reason this stuff is important, when you're looking at teams that avoid strikeouts and teams that are going to consistently avoid strikeouts throughout the season, typically they do a couple of things really well. Their O contact percentage, so contact percentage on pitches outside the zone, very high. The reason this is important, it's arguably the most important part of avoiding strikeouts. If you can keep wasting those pitches on the outer parts of the zone, on the edges of the zone, or outside of the zone, like that nasty breaking stuff, if you keep fouling it off, pitchers eventually have to come back at you with a fastball or something in the zone, which is much more hittable. Obviously easier to put those balls in place. So if you can foul off a lot of those pitches, waste a lot of those pitches, it's a good sign. CSW percentage is called strikes plus whiffs. So called strikes plus swings and misses. You can't take a bunch of called strikes, especially with how bad these umpires have been so far in 2024. You cannot take a ton of called strikes and expect to have a team that avoids strikeouts on a consistent basis. Very important. And then, of course, Z contact, so contact percentage on pitches in the zone. Obviously, you can't get beat in the zone. If you're getting beat in the zone on a consistent basis, you're probably going to strike out a lot. 7 teams entering this week that have done a good job avoiding strikeouts and have really been controlling the game in these 3 areas. Blue Jays, Astros, Guardians, Yankees, Diamondbacks, Cardinals, and Royals. Royals, especially to start the week. Kikuchi, I believe, only had 4 strikeouts against them. Gausman, only 2 strikeouts against them. Back-to-back days on Monday and Tuesday. That's a lineup that was swinging and missing at everything this year. Yeah. We're now a month into the season, and I know we talked about this off-show, Toast. It's a new season. The Yankees are making a lot more contact. The Royals are making a lot more contact. The Guardians are making as much contact as they did last year. The Diamondbacks are, the second half of the year last year, making a lot of contact. Start to take note. You can't just keep fading the Yankees or the Royals based on last year's numbers. It's a new season. It's a unique season. That being said, we do still have the Tigers and the A's swinging at everything, not making contact at a whole bunch of stuff. Those 2 teams have been a couple of teams that you've been able to target pretty well in the strikeout market. The Twins just missed the mark this week, but they've also been pretty bad. A team that you can take a lot of guys strikeout overs against.
Yeah, the Twins, they swing and miss at everything. It seems like it's absolutely ridiculous sometimes with that team. It's so bad.
You got to pay attention with their lineup. Sometimes they sneak a couple of higher contact guys in there, but I mean, there are definitely a few days a week where you look at that lineup and 8 of the 9 guys, you got to worry about at least 1 strikeout, if not 2.
Oh yeah, 100%. So that's absolutely 100%. So, should we talk about some feel-good stories this week?
Yeah, give me your guy, Toast. I know this is our favorite segment that we like to end on each week.
Yeah, just again, there's a lot of guys that are playing good baseball. We're going to try to talk about guys that you might not know or because of us. First and foremost, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Jake Fraley of the Cincinnati Reds. A guy that was, I say, made famous because of our show. In our show, I used to talk about him on a daily basis. Last year, how he was absolutely killing it with the hits, runs, and RBI prop. That's what started it all with Jake Fraley and me. I started betting his hits, runs, and RBIs over 1.5, and every time Cincinnati was at home versus a righty, that just turned into every single day that he's starting at this point. And it's been a very profitable endeavor. And to start off the year, he's been really, really good. And that's what I just wanted to point out, like how good he's really been. He's been sick right now, but in 16 games this year, he's batting .362 with a 158 WRC plus. He's scored 13 times. He's got 4 RBIs. He's got 5 stolen bases. All this in 52 plate appearances. He plays above average defense as well. He's one of the better players on this team. And if the Reds are going to be good, Jake Fraley is one of the guys that is needed to have to play well. I mean, he's definitely doing that this year. The other guy I want to take a look at as well, or at least make people aware of, is Elly De La Cruz, because I know that he started out really slow to start the year off. But since the eclipse or whatever it was, and I swear to God, this is since then, he's been on an absolute tear. So far this season, a 180 WRC plus. He's batting .295. He's got 12 steals, 17 RBIs. He scored 22 runs, 7 homers, and 92 plate appearances. The defense needs some work. There's that he's definitely a below average defender, to say the least. But overall, he's been really, really good for the Reds. Both those guys, I just wanted to give them their flowers, because the Reds, I know that the Reds as a whole kind of are a lovable team, but those 2 guys in particular have been absolutely fantastic for them. And I just, like I said, I wanted everybody to know who they were. I know that everybody knows who Elly De La Cruz is. I get that. But.
Yeah, dude, imagine how good he would be if he'd stop bat and switch as a switch hitter.
Yeah, but imagine how good he'll be if he figures it out.
Fair. He's still only 22 years old.
Exactly.
This is a guy who has truly untapped potential. You mentioned leading the league in steals, 7 home runs already, and he's doing this truly with absolutely no production from half of his, from like one half of the platoon.
Mhm.
If he figures that out, or if he scraps it, like guys we've seen, Cedric Mullins, other guys have done it as well. I mean, this guy, he has tantalizing potential. And you mentioned the defense. I mean, maybe it's a bold take, maybe it's a hot take. He's 6'5", 200 pounds. He might just be a third baseman. Maybe the Reds move him out of the 6 at some point, and the defense isn't a concern at all. And we're sitting here and we're talking about Elly De La Cruz as a truly complete baseball player and MVP candidate for the Cincinnati Reds.
I will say that I would love to see that. They're going to have to. The Reds infield situation is kind of.
He'll be at short. He'll be at short. I'm just saying, long term.
No, I get that. I'm just saying that even if we really wanted to move him, it's going to be really hard because Candelario's there, and then obviously Marte is on suspension as well. Both those guys play a fantastic third base. I wouldn't mind putting him at first. I know that sounds super crazy, but I don't really love Encarnacio Strand in the field. I think that he can be your DH. So if you have Candelario, Marte going short and third, India at second, McLean at second, Encarnacio Strand, Elly De La Cruz at first, I think that's fine. They just have so many infielders that it's really hard to figure it out. I mean, what do you do when Matt McLean comes back? Where are you going to put Jonathan India? He's not going to be your DH. I mean, and if he is, Jesus. So there's a lot of questions to be said about that Reds infield. But I would love to see Elly at third base or something else besides shortstop, so he could have, because I just feel like everything else would come so free to him. You know what I mean? You're not having to focus on everything else, or as far as the errors and stuff like that.
No, I agree. But man, he's even with the flaws that we've mentioned, the guy has been so much fun to watch. So good for baseball. Hopefully he can stay healthy and keep producing at a high level. My guy this week, I guarantee most people have not heard of him. A really, really cool success story that Toast had actually put me on earlier in the week. But Cam Boozer made his MLB debut this past week, or earlier this season for the Boston Red Sox. You can see, started in 2013, rookie ball with the Twins, nothing from 2017 to 2022. This is a guy, really, really interesting story. CNN reported oldest guy to make his MLB debut in the United States since 1947. You can see 32 years old through 3 innings so far this year with the Red Sox. Had previously been in AAA with them last year, and then he was with Arizona back in 2022. But this guy, I'm pulling up some notes here. Broken vertebrae from lifting weights in high school. Had Tommy John, which almost completely wiped out his D1 career. Hit by a car in 2015 and broke his back. So you can see almost nothing in A-ball back at that point. Worked as a carpenter from 2017 through 2021. So, that's part of the pandemic years. Ended up, and I think this is probably the coolest part of the story, he just went back and started coaching youth baseball.
Yep.
And maybe this is I resonate with this a little bit as well with the work that I do, but went back to coaching youth baseball and really just fell back in love with the game, and then was doing some throwing and figured out that he could still throw in the mid to upper 90s without pain, and decided to give things a go again. And then, of course, Arizona gave him a shot in AA with the Red Sox in AAA last year, the start of this season. And, he's thrown 3 innings. Who even cares about the results at this point? A guy that, he's had almost anything you can imagine go wrong for him in the last decade.
Including being suspended for smoking marijuana in 2015.
I didn't even bring that part up. And it's the perseverance that it takes for someone. His pro baseball career started back in 2013. He's over a decade removed from playing rookie ball in 2013 with the Twins. To finally get your chance at the big league level. I know he made his debut, and he had his family there, and he was just overcome with emotion after the game. And it was really cool to see. I think that's the part that sometimes gets lost in professional sports, and especially now that everything has become so corporatized, is there's the human element of this is so powerful, especially in the game of baseball, where you don't get drafted and immediately go to the big leagues. There's guys who are top round picks who never ever make it out of AA, AAA, who end up getting it, their chance in the big leagues later in their career. We saw who I can't remember the guy's name for the Pirates last year, but was a school teacher, got his opportunity. We saw it we see it seems like almost every single year we have a really cool example in the big leagues, but just so cool for a guy like this to be able to finally make his MLB debut after the age of 30, and we'll see if he sticks at this point. It'll be fun to watch.
Drew Maggi.
Yes, that's who it was.
God, that was bothering me for a second. Yeah, he was an Orange Therapy fitness guy. And then what do you know, comes in here getting big league knocks. Also, just really quickly, shout out to the Chicago Dogs of the American Association who signed what's his face? Cam Boozer to get this whole thing started. So yeah, just a really, really cool story. I'm glad you shared that. Thank you.
Of course. Well,
but yeah,
we're under an hour this week. We did pretty good on time. You want to get us out of here?
Yeah, that's a positive thing. Under an hour is always good. Thank you, everybody. Obviously, continue. We're going to try to do some more fan questions and stuff over the next couple of weeks and stuff. It's just really hard to start taking questions and give like good opinions when there's only 25 game sample size. The more that we start to see like the teams that we've touched on, like the Astros and stuff, the more we're going to have stronger opinions as the year goes. So it's only going to get funner as we go. Next week, same time, same type of place. We're always going to record on Monday or Tuesdays, usually to get the weekend over the weekend and stuff. So yeah, I hope to see you guys soon. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Commish, if you don't have anything else to say, I'll see you guys later.
Sounds good. Thank you guys.